Have you ever silently wished something terrible, or made a dark wish that harm would fall on someone? Be honest now, there's no point in lying to yourself. When I say, be careful what you wish for, because it just might come true, I mean it. Because for me, my most horrible wishes always do come true. I can't say for sure when it started, but I can tell you the first time that I know my horrible wish came true, the first time that I allowed a horrible thought to spend a few seconds in the front of my cluttered mind. If only I hadn't made such a horrible wish, my life would be dramatically different. I was in high school when it happened. My father had been distant for years, and seemed to not give a shit about anything. It seemed that the only times he would speak to me, he was lecturing, or even yelling at me for being too loud, wearing too much black, listening to heavy metal, or being 3 minutes late for curfew. One day, after a particularly long lecture about spending too much time with my girlfriend, I thought to myself, I wish he would just kill himself since he's so fucking miserable. The very next day as I arrived home, I entered through the garage, and was surprised to see my father's car inside. It was a Tuesday, so he should have been at work. I entered the house, and went to his room. He wasn't there. I walked down the stairs of our split-entry home and headed to the basement. As I walked through the hallway, I noticed a trail of blood trickling through the grout lines of the hallway tile. The trail was coming from underneath the bathroom door. I panicked and thought my dad must have had an accident. I hurried to the door, and swung it open expecting to see my father trying to clean up a serious cut. This wouldn't be the first time he cut himself while woodworking. As I opened the door, what I saw was far, far worse. I found my dad, or his body that is, sitting in the corner. At his feet lay his 10-gauge shotgun. His head had been split in half, and the only remnant of his face was part of his nose dangling from a piece of skin. I could see the remnants of his skull and brain scattered throughout his now open cranium. The wall immediately behind him had a thick spatter of blood, with protruding lines of blood splattered towards the ceiling, as if a water balloon filled with red paint had been thrown at it in an upwards direction. Since he had shot himself just under the chin, all the blood from his carotid arteries had poured down his front side, creating the stream that had found its way underneath the door crack. Somehow, there was blood and brain matter on all 4 walls and the ceiling. You don't understand how fickle the human body is until you see it scattered around like that. I felt guilty about wishing for my dad to kill himself. I felt like I should have seen the signs of depression, not wished him an untimely demise. I never felt like I had caused it though. It wasn't until much later that I finally realized that it happened because I had wished for it. I started getting suspicious the second time my horrible wish came true. This was in my senior year, and I was still dealing with some shit after my father's suicide. Although I wasn't heavily bullied, there was one kid that had a special vendetta to insult me at every corner. One particular day, he decided to tell me that my father had killed himself because I was so ugly. It was a stupid insult, I know that, but on that day I lost my shit. I punched him right in the teeth. As I was distracted by the immediate pain that seared through my hand and knuckles, he hit me back with a huge haymaker right to the nose, knocking me to the ground in front of every student in the cafeteria. He stood over me and continued to hit me repeatedly, while all I could do was keep my arms over my face. As I waited in the principal's office holding a towel to my broken nose, I thought to myself, I wish he could never talk again. As he was leaving the school, he tripped down the concrete stairs. A crack sounded as he landed directly on his chin. The kid started to make panicked gurgled noises as he struggled to his feet. His mom screamed as he stood up to show the blood that was pouring heavily from his mouth. His eyes were wide as can be as we all looked down to see his tongue laying on the ground. He had bitten his tongue clean off. Needless to say, he was never able to speak again. This is when I began to get suspicious that my thoughts were more than thoughts. I felt as if my wish had caused that incident. That was the second time I had wished harm on someone, and it actually happened. I told myself that I was being crazy. If this happened to you, would you believe it? I finally convinced myself that I was being far too superstitious, and that there was no way that I could make these things happen with my thoughts. Until the third time, that is. I was driving down the interstate when another car flew passed me at a ridiculous speed and cut me off. I had to slam on the brakes of my old beat-up Honda Civic, causing me to lose control. I regained control of my car, but lost control of my temper. This time I said it out loud. I hope that asshole crashes. Immediately after I wished it, the car's front tire blew. The vehicle lost control and turned sharply in the direction of the blown tire. With a loud screech of tires trying to stop, the car went bumper first into the cement barrier at 70 mph. The impact was so hard that the front wheels left the ground as it started to turn over. The car continued to roll several times before finally coming to a stop a few hundred feet after the original collision. I stopped my car and ran toward the heap of metal that was once a car. The driver was unconscious, but seemed to be stirring and alive. However, there was a woman in the car who had apparently not been wearing her seatbelt. Although she lay belly down, her head was twisted backward with her spine protruding from her neck. Her eyes were open, and those dead empty blue eyes stared at me, as if she knew that I had done that to her. As it turns out, the man was taking his pregnant wife to the hospital. She was in the back seat of the car, because she was in labor. The driver survived, but neither the mother nor the baby did. That's when I knew it. I had made that happen with my horrible wish. I had killed that poor woman and her unborn baby, just because I lost my temper. I still feel like a murderer. I even considered turning myself in the hope that justice would serve me, but who would believe that I had murdered that woman with my thoughts? I thought that I could maybe make things right by wishing wonderful, good things to happen. A family friend had been fighting cancer for over a year, and had just been determined as terminal. I wished every day that she would recover, that her cancer would subside. I wished as often as a priest prays, but nonetheless, she died 2 months later. I wished every day that my mother could find happiness after her husband's death, but positive wishes don't come true. My mother fell further into depression and substance abuse every day until she overdosed on opiates. You see, only my horrible wishes are granted. Like the time my girlfriend had cheated on me, so I wished that she would disappear. The next day she was gone, as if she vanished into thin air. That was years ago, and nobody has seen her since. It's a cold case now. Over the years, I've developed drinking and anger problems, and more than once have wished awful things in the heat of the drunken moment. Much like the bartender who cut me off, so now his left hand is cut off. Far too many innocent people have been hurt and killed because of my reckless thoughts, like the now paralyzed man that lived in the apartment above me, when my drunk ass wished that he couldn't make noise anymore. These stories are only a fraction of the people who I have hurt. I know that every time I get drunk there is a good chance that I will wish something awful, some sort of harm to someone that doesn't deserve it, but I just can't put down the fucking bottle. So today I give my last wish. I wish that tonight brings me the horrible death that I deserve.